When I think about mental health and I think about people who can't seem to find a way out of the low mood or the depression that they're in, I think it comes down to three things. I think it comes down to acceptance of your current situation. I think it comes down to ownership of the problem. And I think it comes down to setting your sights on what you want to achieve in the world. Now, there's a lot you can do in the world. I'm gonna focus on this one, the what you can achieve within the world, because I think most mental health talks or most mental health things speak about how to deal with the depression here and now. But I think ultimately it comes down to what we're aiming at. In Jordan Peterson's book, Maps of Meaning, I'm reading that at the moment, and he talks about what you could be. So what could be, and he talks about what is, or what you currently are. This bit in between is kind of what we are doing to try to get to what could be. And I think that's always the problem, because people don't often think about what they are aiming at. And I think that's one of the most important things we can do as people to make sure that we have purpose in the life that we lead. I think about what I once said about me at my funeral, and not in a narcissistic, I want people to say how great I was. I want to have written a story that I am proud of, that I can look back at and say, I'm so glad I did those things, or I'm so glad I put my energy into this. I'm asking you to think about what you want when everything's said and done. What are the things that are most important to you? And what are you going to feel like you've wasted time doing when you look back through your life? The way most people feel worthless is because they waste their time doing things that they don't actually want to do. In the cliche terms, to say to impress people that they don't even want to impress. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to just not knowing a lot of the time. And yes, some people do things to impress other people, but that's because they think that's what they want, and they haven't actually sat down and thought about what really matters to them. So I think the ways you become aware of what matters to you is to become self-aware of your thoughts and feelings. But when it comes to finding that purpose, I think that's one of the biggest antidotes to feeling worthless. So when some people feel like they're not achieving anything in life, or they feel like they're not progressing, that's a lot of the time where they get low mood, or where they constantly question themselves, or their anxiety gets worse, or they find themselves becoming depressed. And that was true for me. I found myself becoming depressed when I didn't know the direction I was heading in. The reason that Maps of Meaning book is so good is he talks about obviously what is, what could be, and talks about how we are constantly adapting our behavior to get to what could be. So every time we learn something, every time we have a conversation about anything, we can adjust the way we behave because we have new information to allow us to head towards this goal in a better way. So if any of you have ever been broken up with, what I find is really interesting within the book is he says you have what is and you have what could be. We're always changing our behavior to get to what could be. So when we want to achieve something or we want to be something, we change our behavior to get to that state. Now, if anything ever tragic has happened to you, a breakup, for example, you get plunged into what he calls chaos. Now, when you get plunged into chaos, it's not enough to just readjust your behaviors. It sometimes means you have to completely change what you're aiming at. And what I mean by that is if you have ever been broken up with, then sometimes you will feel like the meaning of your life has just been shattered. What you thought life was, what you thought you were aiming towards gets taken away from you. And the only way we adjust what we think, or we adjust to feel better, is to change exactly what we're aiming at, because what we were aiming at in the past before the breakup does not match to the new environment we are in. We are in complete unknown territory, and how can you know where you're going if you have changed where you were currently at so drastically that you're on a completely different path? Now, you may still want the same things, but what could be is different now because you have way more information. And sometimes that dramatic like midlife crisis you see people get into happens because they get plunged into chaos, or they spend a long period of their time throughout life getting eaten away at until they realize what they've been doing is not exactly what they want. So that's why I think we should start with the end in mind. We should start with what we want to achieve. We should start with the goal of our life. Because if we start with the goal of our life, we can actually work backwards. We can see, where am I now? What do I want to achieve in my life? What do I want to look back on? And every day, every decision I make goes towards that bigger goal. When it comes to you feeling better and starting to make some purpose of your life, I think you need to think about what you want to achieve in your life, and then every single day act upon that so you move towards that goal. And the reason I think this is so important is purely because I spent a lot of my time questioning myself, and some of you may do the same thing. You don't feel adequate, or you feel insecure, you feel like unaware, and you can kind of feel walked over sometimes, and you may feel like you're just doing things for other people, or you may feel like you don't actually have control over your life, or the government, or your partner, or your friends, or your work, or your boss. Like, they're all the things that are impacting you. And I find that most people just react. So we're reacting to these things. Well, what would happen if we actually took control of it and we decided, I'm not going to just react, I'm actually going to act upon what I want. I am going to act onto the world. I saw a thing the other day, I don't know who it was from, I think it was Jim Carrey, who said, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And I think the reason that is so important to understand is we have the ability to change where we are going. We have the ability to take control of our lives. And I think when it comes to the feeling of being worthless, or when you have that thing of like, I'm not good enough, or I don't feel like I'm contributing, or I don't feel like I have any place in this world, you do have a place in this world, you just need to find it. And I think a lot of that comes from looking, like when you are in a deep, deep depression, it's hard to actually think about those things like, all I want is the pain to stop. All I want is to not think this way. All I want to do is get out of bed. Like, that is how deep it can run. But if there is something you can even look at to improve your life, or to move towards something you want, then that would be the way I'd suggest to do it, is pick something and aim towards it. The feeling of being worthless is one of the worst things ever. And the way you find a way out of it is to give yourself something to be worth. And to give yourself a reason to be worth something, you almost need something to do, so you can feel like you're actually acting upon the world and you are providing value, and that value you provide is the worth that you give. So if that's the case, we need to find what will give us that feeling of worth. When it comes to goals, when it comes to setting your route and your target towards the greatest you could possibly be, self-actualization is being all I could possibly be. And if that is the goal, and that should always be the goal, even people who are struggling with their mental health can think about, what do I want from my life? Because I know damn well when I was going through depression, I didn't want that. So what did I want? What was the thing that I really wanted to achieve in my life? What was the thing that, and this is the really difficult thing, is it gets muddled, because that thing that drives us can be insecurities to start with. And that's the really good thing about motivation and positive kind of experiences, is you get positive emotion from the knowledge that you are working towards a goal. If you get positive emotion from you're working towards a goal, you need to work towards a goal, which means you need to set a goal to start with. And people don't set that initial goal to start with. So that's the thing that you need to start to understand, is we need a goal to aim at before we can even do anything. And then to get motivated to do that goal, you need two things. You need to be scared for your life about the thing you don't want to be. That needs to be the thing that propels you towards the thing you want. With motivation, you need something to run towards, and you need something to run away from. So when you think of Max from Stranger Things, she's running towards her friends, she's running towards like being alive, she's running towards her life, and she's running away from Vecna, she's running away from evil, she's running away from like going down that dark path. When it comes to your life, think of the dark path you could go down. Think about all of the things you couldn't do, or you wouldn't want your life to end up as, and then think of the things you would want it to end up as, and run towards that, and make active choices every single day that you are going to do something which gets you towards that goal. When it comes to feeling down, you need something to aim at, you need to give yourself a reason. Man's Search for Meaning is a book about prisoners of war in the Nazi concentration camps, and the prisoners of war that survived the longest. Viktor Frankl wrote this book, basically he's a psychologist studying the people that lived the longest through these concentration camps and who made it out. And the ones who lived the longest and the ones who made it out are the ones that still had meaning in their life, who still gave meaning and purpose to something outside of their concentration camps, be it family, be it friends, be it a work project that only they could finish. Gave them the ability to move forward and to be motivated to keep going. And the moment they lost sight of that, that was the moment that everything started to crumble and they would end up dead. So that's the thing that you need to remember, is that temptation, things which are instant gratification, pull you away from the long-term success that you could be aiming for if you put it down on a piece of paper. Write down what you want, write down what you don't want, and run towards it.